Once in one dark alley in the evening, attackers attacked a woman. She screamed, but the guys had bad intentions. The men falsely explained that they were not hostile. It was just that the girl's father owed a certain amount and ran away. One of the criminals told the stranger that even if she screamed, no one would hear her anyway, so he told her not to force him to use violence without reason. It seems that the girl looked somewhere behind the man, who mockingly told her that she really thought that those passers-by would help her. Behind the group of criminals, a young couple was walking down the street and noticed this incident in the alley. The girl suggested that her boyfriend call the police, but the guy called her crazy and explained that if they call the police, these bandits will take revenge on them. So the young man suggested that someone would definitely help the victim, and he suggested that his girlfriend run away. And so the girl and the criminals were again left alone in the alley. The victim was upset that passers-by did not help her and began to cry. The main one said that it was time to start, because his younger brothers were already waiting for their turn. With these words he roughly grabbed the girl by the hair. Suddenly, someone called the man from behind. He turned around to look at the one who was tearing him away from his work. A schoolboy with glasses stood in front of the huge adult men. He looked much weaker than these villains. One of the bandits told the boy that this was not a place for walking, because he could accidentally get hurt. The man was holding a huge stick and was clearly about to use it in action. But suddenly something incredible happened. That unremarkable boy hit the legs of a man who was much taller than himself. The guy kicks the second blow to the stomach, forcing the criminal to fly to the side. The man flies in and hits the wall with all his might. The remaining criminals are confused. They do not understand what is happening. But then the stranger hits his knee in the face, and the man who was indignant. They both fly into the air. From the blow, the criminal flies straight towards the leader and the kidnapped girl and falls nearby. The main villain decided to flee without even having time to put his pants back on. The victim, with tears on her face, thanked the guy for saving her. But the stranger didn't seem to notice her. With a crazy smile on his face, he rushed forward past the girl, as if she wasn't lying there. The young man disappeared into the alley. He wanted to catch up with the escaped villain. Meanwhile, the man wondered why he was running away from the high school student in the first place. But the boy quickly caught up with the attacker. The man did not understand what was wrong with the high school student. The villain did not understand why the stranger was pursuing him, because he had already saved that girl. When the villain turned around to check the situation, right behind him was the crazy face of a schoolboy who almost grabbed him with his hand. The man ordered to open the door, and quickly, an entrance wall appeared in front of the villain and his pursuer. The bandit's comrade in front asked the fleeing man what was happening. The criminal shouted for his comrade to quickly call everyone. With these words, he runs through the doors of his base. The boy who was chasing the man stopped right at the door and looked inside. There were many armed thugs in the room. The young man went inside and took off his glasses. One of the villains asked the other where the guy he was running away from was. The man was embarrassed by the absolute composure of the pursuer, who took off his glasses. At that very moment, the high school student's face became ominously frightening. The guy said that this was amazing. Meanwhile, the boss of these villains sat calmly in his office and said that the boy was finished and asked his subordinates to bring the guy to his office. But before the man had time to finish speaking, at the same moment the door to his office was blown off its hinges with a powerful blow. An unknown high school student stood on the threshold of the main villain's office. He was covered in someone else's blood. His clothes were frayed from the battle. All the enemies who met the guy on the threshold were defeated and simply lay on the floor. The young man confidently walked into the chief's office, heading towards the confused boss. And he, meanwhile, sat in a chair in complete bewilderment, and did not understand what was happening. The villain asked the high school student why he continued to pursue him. The young man abruptly planted his foot on the boss's desk, causing the man to nearly fall out of his chair. The guy with an evil grin pointed to the mark on the toe of his shoe, and told the enemy that he had stepped on his foot. After these words, the high school student jumped over the table and flew straight at the bandit boss, who shouted at him to stop. A moment later, the sole of the unknown pursuer's shoe was almost next to the man's face. He noticed that the marks on the toe of his shoe were from his own shoes. At the same moment, the window of this office flew out, broken into pieces. After this incident, the student reasoned why he did this at all. A year ago he was not like this. Why did he go so far? Events go back to a year ago at school. A young man was sitting with a friend and discussing something together. The girl said that this is the same joint project of the government and large corporations to stop bullying in schools. The guy was holding a sheet of paper on which it was written in a large headline that this was the greatest mixed martial arts tournament among teenagers. The young man asked his friend if she was joking. The high school student could not believe the fact that the prize fund is 500 million. Instead of the expected suppression, the organizers rather encouraged them, and the opposite effect is possible. Hillary's friend suggested thinking about it, because those who will take part in this tournament are prohibited from fighting anywhere other than the ring. These are the rules. The girl added the assumption that they might want to take part in that tournament. Hillary said that maybe, but who would have thought that they would allocate 10 million to such a small region? Why would this corporation spend so much money? The girl sharply waved at this reasoning and expressed her thought that if girls were allowed there, then she would try her luck. The guy told Sandy that he understood her feelings, but suggested that she start expressing her femininity instead of being cruel. But her friend got angry at this and suggested that Hillary receive an unfeminine blow from her, which made the young man somewhat confused. Suddenly, two friends heard someone else's chatter nearby. They noticed a crowd of people right in front of them. Sandy noted that it seems that the men's part is not interested in this tournament at all. Hillary did not understand what was happening before their eyes. The girl asked the guy if he was following the news, because she told him to set up a chat to communicate in order to be aware of such big news, and the young man just wanted to know what was happening. Suddenly, a very beautiful girl Holly appeared from the crowd, the owner of an elven beauty who had recently transferred to this school. Sandy told her friend that she could not believe that Hillary had not heard of her. After all, a bunch of womanizers from their school tried to hit on her, but no one succeeded. She simply rejected everyone. Sandy noticed that the new girl was very rude and straightforward, and just recently she said something provocative to the bandits. Holly told them to get lost. The transferred girl was not afraid of anything at all, and Sandy said that she believed that the new girl was like her in this way, while Hillary's gaze was completely riveted on the charming person. A friend noticed that the guy now has the face of an idiot, because for a girl like Holly they are both nothing more than just a background. Suddenly the unpredictable happened. The new girl approached the bench on which Hillary and Sandy were sitting. The two friends did not understand what had happened for some time and simply looked at the girl in silence. Holly was also looking at them. She was literally half a meter away from the two, and Hillary and Sandy only now realized what had happened. The young man apologized in shock and immediately wondered why he did it. In his mind the guy didn't understand why he couldn't say a word normally. But Holly simply extended her hand to Hillary in greeting, after which the girl with a friendly smile added that she thought that the guy entered this school, and asked him to take care of her. Hillary shook his new acquaintance's hand. It happened automatically, because the guy had not yet recovered from the portion of shock he received. Sandy was also in no less shock. This was the end of Hillary's ordinary life, because from that moment on, the guy's life turned into hell. This handshake was seen by one of the local hooligans. One day Hillary sat quietly and calmly ate his lunch. A classmate approached the guy and asked the young man for a favor. The boy explained that he usually bought food for children who could not get it themselves, but a classmate explained that he now has problems with his leg. The guy introduced himself as Tony and asked if Hillary knew him, but he replied that he didn't know because he had only recently entered this school. Tony was glad that he didn't know him. This alerted Hillary, and the new acquaintance handed the guy a piece of paper. Tony explained that he brought food for these guys, but now because of his leg he cannot do this and asked the young man to provide him with that service for just one day. Hillary looked at the contents of the sheet, but his new acquaintance immediately made a sad face and said that this was causing too many problems. But the guy took pity on Tony and agreed to help him. The guy with the crutch immediately regained his smiling appearance and thanked the newcomer for his help. Hillary immediately rose from his seat and went to fulfill Tony's request. Having bought the necessary products, the young man headed to the indicated address, but suddenly Sandy noticed him. The girl recognized the guy and asked where he was in such a hurry. Hillary briefly explained that Tony had injured his leg, so the guy was delivering food for his friends. Without allowing his friend to say anything in response, the young man said that they were probably very hungry and hurried to the goal, and Sandy, it seemed, wanted to say something important. Without a second thought, Hillary noted that Tony is a good-natured person because he does this every day, and meanwhile, He himself was already at the right office. The young man with a friendly smile showed up at the assigned class and asked if Dustin was there. At the same moment, all the students turned to Hillary, and their faces looked wildly shocked. At that moment the guy thought that this was probably another office. But at the same moment, a voice was heard behind him, informing him that this was the same office. The young man turned around to look at the one who suddenly appeared behind him. Not only was Hillary a transfer student, but he didn't use any social media or messaging apps, so he didn't know who Dustin really was, or that Tony was his errand boy. Realizing the whole situation that Hillary had gotten himself into, the guy sat under a tree upset. Sandy approached the young man and asked why the guy was so sad. He looked up at her. The girl sat down next to her friend and asked him what happened. Sandy added that if someone bothers Hillary, then let him just tell her, and she will deal with it right away. The young man answered his friend that it would be better for her not to worry about him. Sandy said that Hillary had always helped her without any questions, and now for some reason he wanted her to just leave him. But the young man objected that he did not remember when he had helped her. The girl reminded him of an incident in the second year of school near the river, but the guy did not remember it. Sandy said that on the day when she fell into the river, Hillary jumped into the water after her. The girl jokingly added, "Does the guy know how difficult it is to pull out a person who cannot swim at all?" Suddenly, Hillary's friend stopped smiling and became gloomy. The girl told the young man that, to tell the truth, at that time she wanted to commit suicide, and at that moment when the guy jumped into the water and then began to ask for help, Hillary asked her friend why she wanted to commit suicide. Sandy said that her father was also a drunkard, so he constantly beat them. The girl could barely stand it. The girl added that on that day the man she calls father committed an unforgivable act. And then my friend smiled sharply and asked me to forget about it. Sandy lay down on the grass and said that she endured everything because of her mother. But it was difficult, especially for a girl in her second year of high school. The girl asked Hillary if he remembered what he said when they got out of the water. A friend reminded me that the young man said then that you shouldn't get into the water here, because the water here is just terrible. How disgusting. Sandy said she laughed really hard then. The girl rose from the grass again and turned to the guy. The friend said that after laughing enough, something about her made her want to live again. Hillary looked at her in amazement. Sandy added that before the guy jumped into the water to save her, she hated guys. But after that day, she felt like she could trust them a little more. The girl wondered why Hillary, although he could not swim, decided to save her. The young man replied that he saw someone fall into the water, and he did not know what to do, so it came out instinctively. Sandy joked that the guy fell in love with her, but he immediately objected, and her friend replied that it was such a joke. Some time later, Hillary brought Dustin shopping. The guy said that there was no bread that he asked for in the cafeteria, but the bully replied that the guy didn't do anything wrong. Tony just didn't explain everything well. Dustin turned to Tony, who jumped in fear. The boy immediately began to apologize and begged to fix everything. But Dustin continued that even though it was Tony's mistake, they couldn't just let Hillary go if they wanted to set an example. The bully added that it would be the work of the guy with the crutch, and he threatened him that otherwise he would again become an errand boy. With these words, Tony swung his fist at Hillary. All the hooligans present laughed. Dustin asked someone to film it, and someone mockingly called Tony strong. Then the main one asked the boy to beat Hillary easier, because at that moment their elven princess was looking at the guys. It seemed to Hillary that people commit suicide simply because they cannot bear such a life anymore. But now he realized that this was not the real reason. Dustin told his new errand boy that his work must be kept secret from everyone, and if anyone found out about it, the punishment would be severe. The chief hinted that he would do unpleasant things to his young sister. The reason is not that Hillary cannot live such a life. A person decides to commit suicide when he simply has no other choice. When all options for the path of life have sunk into oblivion, then the person begins to look for a path that he no longer has to follow. At least that's what Hillary felt now. The young man stood on the edge of the roof and wondered what to do next. The guy didn't know what to do now. Suddenly a hand touched his shoulder from behind. Hillary panicked. He threw himself on his knees and covered his head with his hands in horror, feverishly repeating that they would forgive him and that he would definitely get money for them. It turned out that Sandy was behind the guy. The young man tried to justify himself so that the girl would not worry about him, but a friend asked in frustration since when he became like this. Hillary began to shout, He said that he was a coward and asked Sandy to leave him alone. The girl wanted to somehow support the guy, but the young man asked him to stop pretending to worry about him, and added that he was already sick of it. Leaving the roof, the guy told Sandy to stop following him, otherwise he would kill her. After these words, the girl got angry and, calling her friend a coward, wished him to die. She could not believe that she called him her friend. The next day at school, during lunch, everyone sat in groups, and Hillary ate alone. Each group discussed something, but the young man simply remained silent. Suddenly, someone hit him on the head with such force that the guy's face flew into the food container. One of Dustin's bullies appeared behind Hillary. He jokingly asked for forgiveness, and said that there was a fly on the guy's head. The young man quickly answered the enemy that everything was fine and he was fine. But at the same moment, the guy received a second, equally strong blow, and Hillary's face plunged into the lunch container again. The young man stood up and tried to clear his throat. The bully repeated the mockery that a fly landed on the guy's head again. At that moment, the figure of Dustin himself appeared on the threshold of the classroom. The big guy mockingly told the guy that friends take care of each other. It looks like a beautiful scene. For a second, Dustin pretended to look thoughtful, and a moment later he again raised his hand above the guy's head to kill the non-existent fly. Suddenly, his huge paw was grabbed by two female palms. Hillary, squeezing his head with his hands, preparing to receive a new blow, suddenly realized that he had been dragging on for a suspiciously long time. Sandy held the enemy's powerful hand tightly. The girl told the bully that it is not cool to bully the weak because they are stronger. But Dustin smiled disgustingly at the girl, and at the same moment he put his hand under Sandy's jacket. The girl recoiled from the scoundrel and was indignant at his action. The big guy grinned an ugly smile and asked why Sandy suddenly stopped. The girl replied that even if they pretended to be strong, then for her they would still be a bunch of weaklings stroking their pride, and added that if they continued to bully Hillary, the girl would report to the police. The second of the hooligans, who is blonde, he called Sandy crazy, told her to call her police and added that he would see who dies first, because people like her should be slaughtered for the sake of normalcy. The enemy swung his hand at Sandy, about to strike, when suddenly Dustin stopped him. The main one said to stop, because this shouldn't happen among friends, but the blonde was indignant and asked why. Dustin, with his constant smile, replied that classes were already over. All the students began to go home. The blonde asked the boss why he just left that girl. Dustin asked his comrade a question, "Isn't he hungry?" He didn't quite understand him. The chief explained that he was suddenly hungry and needed something more exciting. The smile on his face changed from an evil one to a monstrous grin. Meanwhile, Hillary and Sandy were walking to their home. The guy told the girl that he had already asked her not to follow him and to stop worrying about him and just go home. But his friend told him that she should worry about him, and she explained, because the day Hillary saved her in that river was the day her father began to sexually abuse her. At this phrase, Hillary stopped moving towards the house and stopped. The girl continued that suddenly a complete stranger began to take care of her, and then she found the strength to move on with her life. A friend said that for her, Hillary became a substitute father, so she was able to communicate more freely with other people. Sandy decided that she would not leave the guy, even if he believed that it was none of her business. Therefore, the girl asked to simply rely on her so that they could end all this bullying together. Hillary listened to her friend in silence, and at the end asked what he should do. The guy began to cry out in despair, informing him that these hooligans were threatening his little sister, so what Sandy would order him to do. The young man added, because if he doesn't resist, then everything will be fine. These thugs won't touch anyone, including Sandy. Hillary turned to face his friend, but she was no longer there. Just a couple of seconds ago she was there. Sandy's friend went looking for her. He had no idea where his friend had gone. But suddenly Hillary realized where she could have gone, or rather, who kidnapped her. Meanwhile, Dustin and his bullies dragged Sandy to an abandoned building. The enemies threw the girl to the floor, and she shouted at them to take their hands off. But Dustin smiled his disgusting smile again, and told the girl not to think that they would just leave her alone. The chief ordered his comrades to grab the girl by the arms and legs. Sandy tried to resist and screamed at the guys to stop and let her go. But the hooligans ignored her requests and continued to do what they had in mind. The girl screamed too loudly, so Dustin ordered one of his gang to take off his socks and give them to him. The guy quickly took off his shoes and took off his socks. He handed them to Dustin, who noted the terrible stench coming from the socks. The chief turned to the girl and told her that if they had just remained silent, then everything would have been much simpler. Dustin stuffed Sandy's mouth with his socks. A gang of thugs attacked the girl like a pack of wild wolves. Sandy was going crazy with fear, losing her last hope of salvation. Suddenly, behind the bandits, someone shouted, demanding to stop. Hillary ran up to the crowd of guys, with a stick in his hand. But a moment later the guy gets hit on the back with a stick from the blonde. The young man almost lost consciousness. Hillary fell face down on the floor. The girl spat out the gag and called her friend, hoping that he was still conscious. The young man crawled towards the villains, simultaneously clearing his throat from lack of oxygen after the blow. The main one shouted out praise to the blonde, and he was already standing with a stick over Hillary, preparing to strike again. The young man, in despair, shouted to Dustin that he did everything that the gang of hooligans ordered him to do. Why were they doing this? But the local boss replied to let the guy think for himself. And immediately the chief replied that he could eat whenever he wanted. The girl, in tears, tried to apologize to the scoundrels, begging them not to do this. But Dustin silently picked up the discarded sock gag. The chief got angry with Sandy and shouted at her, but she spat out the gag and raised his hand to strike. Hillary, in tears, begged the villains to stop, but immediately his mouth was gagged by the blonde, who sat on top of the guy. Dustin, smiling maliciously, demanded that his assistant hold the young man tightly so that he would not miss a single scene, and the enemy himself began to put his hands under the girl's clothes. The chief took off Sandy's underwear and approached her closely. The other guys from the gang continued to hold the girl so that she would not twitch, and Hillary made futile attempts to escape from the blonde's strong grip. Sandy looked at her friend with eyes full of tears and pain. Inside Hillary, everything at one moment shattered into the smallest fragments, because his loved one had just been hurt. There are many reasons why you might get bullied, such as lack of social skills. They can also be bullied because they look different from others. They also mock people with a different position in life, not similar to the majority. There are people who have everything and others have nothing, but in between there will always be a group who are bullied by others. But as far as Hillary's situation is concerned, the guy was just an idiot. The guy thought that he wanted to become strong, but even if he wanted, he did not have such an opportunity, because he did not even know how to fight, and his only idea was to join a club with some kind of wrestling. But in all the clubs the young man was refused for various reasons, most often because the selection of those interested had already ended. In fact, the coaches refused the guy because the students promised to quit classes if Hillary joined the club, but in fact there were few students in the clubs. The young man felt as if he had turned into an insect. Hillary thought that someone like him was not capable of anything. Returning home, the guy noticed some kind of showdown between people in a dark alley. Two men tried to steal a wallet from some drunkard. The second man advised him to hit the old man. Hillary picks up a large boulder from the ground. Gathering all his courage, the guy ran as fast as he could towards the criminals, simultaneously shouting to them to stop. And now, a meter away from the robbers, the young man raises his hand with a cobblestone to strike. But at the very last moment, due to bad luck, Hillary trips over a stone and falls, dropping the stone from her hand. The criminals stood at the guy's head and were perplexed by his strange appearance. Immediately one of the men raised his leg above the young man's head, intending to strike. Hillary mentally became completely desperate, realizing that someone like him was not capable of doing anything. Suddenly, a stranger kicks one of the criminals. The young man recognized this girl. It was the new girl, Holly. With her blow, the girl sent the enemy straight into the wall. Then the second robber shouted at the girl and swung a bottle at her, but Holly deftly intercepted the blow and grabbed the man by the throat. The girl grouped herself and, jumping up, carried the enemy with her with a powerful grip. Holly threw the man over herself and hit him on the concrete road with all her might. Meanwhile, Hillary, who was watching nearby, was impressed by the skill of the new girl. The girl approached the man who was attacked by two robbers. The young man wanted to say something, but Holly didn't seem to notice him. The new girl sat down next to the man and addressed him as an uncle. She asked him not to sleep here. The girl put her relative on her back and walked away, simultaneously scolding the man for forcing his niece to do such things. Meanwhile, Hillary was amazed how such a fragile girl could beat two grown men. The young man asked Holly to slow down, but the new girl continued to drag the man on her, reproaching him for the fact that he had become heavier and soon she would not be able to look after him. The guy was completely desperate that Holly didn't notice him. He decided that the girl didn't care much about someone like him. Suddenly the new girl called out to the young man, who raised his downy, sad gaze. The girl finally decided to stop and took a deep breath. Holly turned to the guy and asked him what he was worth. Wasn't he going to help? Hillary carried the new girl's uncle, and she led him. The guy looked at the girl, because after that battle he had a lot of questions. Holly started the conversation herself. She asked the young man if he knew how such a weak girl like her was able to defeat them. Hillary was stunned that the girl answered his questions so easily. The new girl turned around and told the guy that it was all thanks to him. The young man became all flushed and clarified what the girl meant by these words. Holly explained that she does not possess brute physical strength. However, while they were distracted by the boy, she was able to get close to them unnoticed. The newcomer added that even if her opponent is physically superior, if he is caught off guard, even the weakest girl like her can emerge victorious. The girl continued that there are 3 extremely vulnerable places, but it is quite difficult to take advantage of this, since they can be easily protected. These vulnerable places were the eyes, groin, and jaw. Holly added that although the jaw seems solid, its structure is quite shaky and can easily be knocked out. In addition, a large number of nerves pass through there. If you correctly hit an enemy who did not have time to defend himself, then you can knock him out with one blow. When the second saw what had happened to the first, he panicked and rushed at her with all his might with a bottle in his hand. Because the girl said that she simply used his own strength against him. When he approached Holly, she simply lightly pushed the guy in the direction she needed. The girl explained that this way she was able to use a technique that she would never have been able to do in a normal situation. Hillary still continued to wonder how the new girl managed to pull it all off. Holly told the guy that if he was interested in how she achieved this, then she had a teacher who helped her learn all this. The young man asked the girl who this teacher was. Hillary helped the girl drag her uncle home. They threw the man onto the sofa to sleep, and Holly introduced her uncle as her very teacher. The guy found it hard to believe it. The girl explained that her uncle was now having problems with the gym. It would soon be closed. But the most important thing was that the man had lost any desire to teach anyone. Hillary fell to his knees in front of the man on the sofa. Holly didn't understand what the guy was trying to do and asked him about it. The young man began to bow before the new girl's uncle and beg him to take him on as a student. The guy said that he wanted to become stronger, but no one wanted to accept him. Hillary added that he wants to destroy his enemies, but a coward like him cannot do anything. In response, only silence came from the man, but the young man did not give up and continued to bow. Mentally the guy began to despair. Uncle Holly suddenly sat up on the bed. Silence continued to emanate from the man. The new girl's uncle abruptly gets up from the sofa. Hillary was confused, but continued to wait for the man's further actions. Suddenly the old man spoke. He said that it seemed that the fun days had come to an end. Hillary carefully asked him if this meant that the guy was accepted. The man answered in the affirmative, and the young man thanked him in return. The next day in the office, Uncle Holly prepared a contract for the guy. He clarified what it meant. He needed to sign the contract. Hillary went through the contents of the text of the document. It said that the guy must carry out all his commands no matter what. The contribution will also be, no matter what the man calls it. The young man continued to read out the contract for clarification. It also stated that, in addition, if the guy fights using the skills learned from Uncle Holly, he must give him a share of all the money received in this way at the rate of 8-2. The guy asked the man to explain this point, and Holly's uncle replied that, of course, it was him who was 8. Hillary tried to resist this for a second, but the man told him that if the guy didn't want to, then he could just leave here. The young man thought that he was not going to fight for money anyway, so there was no point in giving up everything because of this point. All he needed was to become stronger. The guy understood everything for himself and decided. He clarified where to sign. The man smiled a wide smile. Hillary handed the document to Uncle Holly. He very sharply tore the sheet of paper out of the boy's hands. The old man took out his phone and asked the interlocutor if he had heard everything. The man told the man he was talking to on the phone that he had found him a guy he could use as much as he wanted. Hillary felt that something was wrong, and Uncle Holly was talking on the phone with an unknown person about something else. The guy realized that the techniques he could learn were self-defense for women. The young man tried to ask the old man about the man who was mentioned in the telephone conversation, whether he was Hillary. The old man ordered the young man to take off his glasses. He did not understand why, but he took them off. The guy still asked why it was necessary to do this. The man explained through a cough that you shouldn't hit a man with glasses, but the young man asked him what he said. Uncle Holly said that the guy would come soon, then Hillary would know everything. The young man immediately responded with a question about who would come. The old man thoughtfully asked the young man if he had heard about the greatest mixed martial arts tournament. He replied that he had not heard much. The man added that the person who came up with this will be here soon. Suddenly the door opened. Uncle Holly said that there he was. Hillary turned towards the door to look at the stranger, and he immediately clarified with the guy that it was him. The young man was shrouded in bewilderment. He repeated the stranger's question. The chairman of the corporation stood at the window and wondered what Larry was doing. The man in the classic suit replied that after the official announcement of the tournament, Larry stopped starting fights at school. The man in the classic suit suggested that the chairman's idea was effective. The old man wondered and asked his subordinate's point of view why he thought that rascal Larry was always looking for strong opponents. The man in the classic suit replied to the chairman, if he allows him to express his thoughts, then he believes that the young master is trying to find his place among the elite by using his talent in fights. The man added that, in addition, the president's divorce, and immediately added that he was very sorry. The chairman immediately reassured the subordinate. He said that he also believed that after his son's divorce, his grandson was trying to forget everything in this way. The old man asked the man in a black classic suit if he had found anyone who could be his opponent, because lately he was constantly looking for someone to fight with, due to the fact that his subordinate could not find anyone. But the man in a black classic suit replied that he had found one. He had already signed the contract himself. The old man asked his subordinate who he was. Meanwhile, at the fight club, Hillary was lying on the floor. He was ordered to get up, but he did not react at all. The tall, handsome stranger said that the boy passed out after one blow and didn't know what to do about it now. Uncle Holly replied that this could be considered a kind of acquaintance, although he was not the one who knocked him out. The stranger asked the old man. The man clarified that he assumed that it looked like this guy hadn't eaten or slept in the last few days, but the stranger didn't knock him out. Uncle Holly added that Hillary had simply fallen asleep. The old man grinned and told the stranger that with his skills, he would never defeat Hillary, so he need not worry. But the young man was outraged by the man's harsh words. He said that he had destroyed many gangs throughout the country, to which Uncle Holly replied that he would soon understand what he meant. Meanwhile, Hillary woke up. He didn't understand when he fell asleep and what that sound was. He had the feeling that because of this sound he felt full in his stomach. Then the guy realized that it was the sound of him eating. The young man did not understand since when he had been eating this. Next to Hillary there were many packages of food. The guy was perplexed by the realization that he ate it alone. Suddenly that stranger appeared in front of the guy. The young man asked Hillary if he had woken up and was indignant that it was very boring for him to feed a sleeping man. But the boy asked why he was feeding him. The young man added that he couldn't see anything without glasses. He asked who this young man was. Suddenly Hillary's eyes widened at the stranger. The guy jumped the stranger, but he was perplexed why the young man suddenly reacted to him like that. The boy asked the tall man to stop and not hit him, but the stranger replied that he had no intention of doing anything. The tall guy wondered how Hillary even knew he was going to kick him, since the guy doesn't see well, but he noticed it anyway. Suddenly Uncle Holly revealed that this is precisely why the boy has vision problems. The man added that he said that the tall one would not defeat him, no matter how hard he tried. The boy did not understand what the old man was preparing. The tall one also didn't quite understand the old man, but he told Hillary that he was a corpse. The young man asked the teacher why this man suddenly attacked him. Meanwhile, the tall one was already in a fighting stance, ready to attack at any moment. But the man replied that Hillary himself signed the contract, so he could easily be beaten half to death. The boy asked if there was such a thing, to which the teacher simply spread his arms to the sides. At the same moment, the tall one, with all his strength, charged Hillary's face with his fist. From this attack the young man flew far away and rolled on his neck on the floor. The stranger said that of course this was in the contract, and it would be strange if the guy could not take down a weakling like Hillary. The boy recovered from the blow and called the teacher. The young man asked if they could cancel the contract, and added that everything would be in vain if he died without learning to fight. The tall one was mentally indignant, because he hit the boy with all his might, and then Hillary had the strength to stand up. Therefore, the young man raises his fist to strike again. The boy was unable to dodge the attack, so he again took a powerful blow from the tall one. The young man told Hillary that there was more to come and attacked the guy from above with a kick. The blow landed right on the back of the boy's head. Hillary was slammed high into the floor with all the force of his fast and powerful attacks. The young man, slightly out of breath, stood over the defeated young man and followed him with his eyes. The tall one realized that he did not feel the blow itself, because everyone definitely achieved their goal. Hillary jumped off the floor and again began to beg his teacher to cancel the contract. But now the threat of going to the police was added to the request. The young man became enraged and was about to strike the boy again, and Holly's uncle told him that he warned him that he wouldn't be able to beat Hillary if he took off his glasses. The tall one was indignant that how could this be possible, because the boy looked like a weakling. The man explained that this is the work of golden vision. The young man was perplexed. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. The old man said that experienced fighters always subconsciously hide part of their movements when attacking, because if the opponent sees your movements from beginning to end, then it will not be difficult for him to evade. The man added that no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to hide everything because it is the core of his movements, because even the slightest movement of his muscles is reflected in the core on which his movements are based. The tall one asked what this had to do with this golden vision or something. The man replied that the reason why people do not see the movement of others' cores is because people rely too much on their eyesight. Uncle Holly added that people see too many things through their eyes and cannot concentrate on anything else. He gave an example if his opponent was a gangster with a very prominent tattoo, or with a bloodthirsty smile, or if he pulled off a successful feint. The old man replied that Hillary's eyes were special. The guy doesn't see any of this, but he can easily see the core, the basis of all movements. The tall one clarified whether this is what is called golden vision. Then Hillary himself intervened. He apologized for interrupting them while they were talking, but the guy said that they forced him to sign a contract so that he would become a punching bag, and the guy himself was not at all capable of predicting movements. The young man added that he had not taken a vision test and asked how they knew his visual acuity. The man extended his hand in front of Hillary, in which the boy's glasses were, and he said that he tried to wear his glasses. The tall one irritably noted that this was all some kind of absurdity. He did not understand how one person could determine the vision of another simply by wearing his glasses. Uncle Holly explained that this was all, of course, because the man himself had the same golden vision. With these words, the old man put on Hillary's glasses. The young man again made a sharp remark that the old man could really evade any attacks thanks to this vision. The man answered in the negative, and explained that his body simply reacts automatically to sudden movements, so we can say that he has a heightened sixth sense. Uncle Holly summed up that Hillary is a born fighter. The boy was shocked by the old man's statement. The man said that perhaps there was no one in this country better than him when it came to dodging attacks, and noted that Larry, with his current speed, did not have a 20% chance of defeating him. Larry, with a sly grin, decided to clarify something. The tall one asked the old man if he could kill Hillary, if he could kill anyone in this country. Larry now turned to Hillary. He said that he was right that the boy needed to be finished off, but the young man asked him to stop and not believe all this, because Uncle Holly said it. But the man intervened. He told the young man that now was not the time for sparring. He valued his time very much, so Larry should leave this place. But the tall one immediately said that he would pay double. The old man immediately allowed Larry to measure his strength, but Hillary was upset that his opinion was not taken into account. This is how Hillary's vacation began, and this is how it ended. The boy was constantly under a hail of blows. Having learned nothing, the boy returns to school again. Suddenly the guy felt some kind of pleasant feeling. He didn't understand where he was. Suddenly, glasses appeared in the guy's head. The young man did not understand why they appeared in his head. A moment later, Hillary woke up abruptly. Having caught his breath, the young man could not understand what it was, a dream or not, after which the young man realized that he had actually been sleeping in the middle of the street. And then Uncle Holly appeared in front of him. He was holding some kind of branch in his hand. The man asked why the guy was sleeping here. The young man replied that he himself did not know how he ended up here. Uncle Holly asked the boy if he had said that today was the first day of his return. The young man agreed and apologized. With these words, Hillary rushed away, and the man followed him with his gaze. Suddenly Holly called the old man. He turned around at her voice. The niece asked his uncle if he had hypnotized the young man, but he slyly noticed that he simply installed a small lever that releases the guy's pent-up emotions outward. The girl did not quite understand her uncle's words. The man smiled slyly and flashed his rows of teeth. The old man explained to his niece that the whole point is in the glasses. As soon as the guy takes them off, the fun will begin. Hillary sat on the threshold of the school, realizing that he had not changed over the summer. The guy realized that he was still so pathetic. The young man could not believe that for a whole month he could not hit Larry even once, and with sadness in his voice he summed up that he had no talent in martial arts. Suddenly, someone picked up his last phrase about martial arts. Suddenly, the thugs who usually walk with Dustin appeared in front of the guy. One of the thugs asked why the guy went to training, and if he wanted to fight with them later. The blonde suggested starting the test right now and swung his long leg at the guy. The blow hit the young man directly in the body and face, after which Hillary flew at full speed straight into the wall. The blonde sat down next to the guy and said that they promised that they would take care of him if he gave them some money and brought them lunch. The villain told the guy to thank him and bent Hillary's head down. The young man was silent. This infuriated the blonde. He hit the guy on the head and ordered him to speak. The enemy added that Hillary always makes him hit her, and called him a weakling. From the force of this blow, the guy's round glasses fell onto the concrete street. The blonde sarcastically added that if the guy had listened to them, his precious glasses would have remained intact and not broken. When leaving, the guys rushed after Hillary to prepare everything for them for tomorrow, asking him to try, otherwise he would be beaten. Suddenly, the guy on the trail of the hooligans shouted an insult at them. One of the guys repeated Hillary's words. The young man told them that they could leave, just let them tell where Dustin was. The guy repeated the question again, but in a rougher and louder voice. One of the villains noticed a crowd of students who decided to watch the outcome of the battle. The enemy noticed a mop for washing the floor next to him. The bully grabs the mop and breaks off the part with the rag. The guy goes into battle with Hillary with this stick, and now the villain's weapon is swinging over the boy's head. In an instant, the stick turns out to be broken in half. Someone's foot appears in front of the young man's head, which breaks the stick in half. The villain did not understand what happened. The figure of a tall guy appeared in the air. Suddenly Larry appeared in front of the villains, and asked the villains how they dared touch his punching bag without permission. The blonde asked the guy who suddenly appeared who he was. One of the hooligans told the other that a new guy had joined them as of today. The blonde called the newcomer a psycho. Larry told the blonde that if he was going to continue to just chat, he'd probably start on his own. But the enemy became furious at these harsh words, and he opened his folding knife. The blonde insulted the tall one and said that it was time for him to come down to earth. Suddenly, a passing teacher intervened in the dispute between the guys. He shouted loudly to a group of young men what they were doing there, but the bully pretended to be kind and explained to the teacher that the new guy asked to show him the school. The blonde with a feigned grin invited Larry to show him the gym, and he whispered to the young man that we'll talk next time. The teacher once again warned the group of boys not to cause problems immediately after the holidays. All the boys left this part of the school. The blonde told Hillary to go with them to an abandoned building after school, and as he left, he said after him that he would meet Dustin there. Meanwhile, at the self-defense club for women, Larry noted that the punching bag was late today. Something was wrong, and Uncle Holly suggested that the young man go check it out so as not to worry again. Larry replied that he was not crazy. If it was at school, he would simply use the teacher to avoid a fight, but if he was caught in a street fight, then he could only dream of the greatest mixed martial arts tournament. The man said that this could end badly. Larry noticed that there really was a student in this world that the old man was worried about. But Uncle Holly objected. He said that he was not worried about him at all. The tall one asked him what the man meant then. The old man told Larry that he really thought that Hillary really couldn't hit him at all. The man added that he had seen a lot of counterattacks on his part. He just didn't put any force into them. Uncle Holly wondered why the boy was limiting himself. The tall one answered without hesitation that, of course, because he was stronger. But the old man objected and suggested that he think carefully while driving here every day by car. Hillary, to get here, walks up the mountain on her own 2 feet. While Larry is chilling, the boy trains to the point of exhaustion. The man explained that the real reason is that Hillary is not at all angry with Larry. The tall one did not understand the essence of Uncle Holly's words. He explained that the boy was not the type of person who simply wanted to become the strongest. The man added that people like Hillary cannot fight at full strength without a reason. The old man explained that the boy's movements are purely instinctive. In other words, as long as he is of his right mind, nothing can be expected from him in battle. Larry asked what this means. Does Uncle Holly want to say that if the boy is angry, he will suddenly become stronger? The man replies that this is not entirely true. Of course, their level of training is still very different. But if we are not talking about a fair fight in the ring, that is, there are many things that can replace a fist, so the old man does not know how it will all end. Uncle Holly explained that he thinks this couple of bandits may well meet their maker today, because they have a lot of bandits in the city. The man was really worried about the poor victims that would catch his eye. Larry blindly hoped that the boy would not fight on the first day of school. Meanwhile, Hillary climbed the stairs of an abandoned building with Dustin's gang. The guy didn't understand why he didn't feel any fear at all. Even moreover, when he looks at the hooligans, the young man just wants to kill them one by one, every single one of them. But every time this thought came into Hillary's head, the guy felt uneasy. One of the hooligans said that they were there and Dustin was waiting for him. The young man entered a fairly spacious space, but it was crowded. These were hooligans from Dustin's gang. The guy thought that every time he is in such a situation, it all becomes so exciting. Hillary glanced around the entire space and suspected that Dustin was most likely at the farthest back of everyone, sitting at a desk. Some girl was lying on the bed and some hooligan was pressing her to her. She asked for help. The young man remembered for a second the incident with Sandy, which made him feel uneasy. But the bully quipped that the girl was asking the errand boy to help her. He called her stupid because asking for help requires those who are stronger, which she can expect from a loser like him. And at the end the bully called the girl and Hillary insects. At the same moment, the enemy receives a strong blow from the errand boy, knocking him off the mattress to the side. The blow was so powerful that some of the villain's teeth simply shattered, and his body shot up and twisted into a spiral, hitting his head on the concrete. All the other hooligans were confused by this attack. Hillary yelled for Dustin to come out, but the blonde ordered to kill this boy. Immediately several opponents rushed towards the guy at once, but the young man was standing by a pile of bricks. He took one of them. As soon as the opponents came close to the young man, he hit one of the hooligans in the face with a brick. Then the guy began to attack all his enemies with bricks. One of the hooligans swung a bottle at him, but Hillary accurately threw a piece of brick. He definitely hit the bottle and broke it in the hands of the villain. The young man jumped up and struck the enemy with both legs at once. With the force of this blow, the enemy's body flew to the side at full speed. The villain landed right on top of the blonde, and both guys hit the table behind them. The blonde began to become indignant and wave a folding knife, looking out from under the body of his comrade, who was already unconscious. But at the same moment, Hillary jumped with all his strength and speed on the blonde and the guy lying on him. With this attack, the boy slammed the villains into the concrete floor. Those around the enemy did not understand what had suddenly become of the quiet errand boy. Some of the hooligans who were still conscious took off running for their lives. And so Hillary approached the desk, which was located at the very end of this space. Here he was supposed to meet Dustin in order to take revenge on him. The young man clenched his fingers into a fist and swung his hand to deliver a powerful blow to the enemy. But at the last moment a voice from the table asked him to stop. Sitting at the table was not Dustin's main enemy, but his pawn Tony. The guy begged in front of Hillary and began in tears to ask him not to beat him. He had a phone in his hands. Tony explained that the others ordered him to film the beating of Hillary, so he simply did what he was told and asked not to beat him. But the guy screamed and swung at Tony. However, the attack fell on the edge of the table almost in front of the very nose of Tony's pawn, who was already almost dying of fear. Hillary wondered where Dustin was then, but suddenly he noticed the blonde, who had come to his senses. The young man became wary, preparing for action at any moment. The guy asked the blonde where Dustin was, but the bully mumbled that he didn't know. Hillary picked up almost a whole brick from the floor. The guy again asked the blonde where Dustin was, but the blonde said that he didn't know and added that he dropped out of school. The young man asked for the third time where Dustin was, and this time he swung the brick with all his might. But at that moment Larry appears and knocks the brick out of the guy's hands. The tall one tells his punching bag to calm down, but Hillary shouted to him that if he interfered, he would also die. Larry silently knocks the young man out. It flies high off the floor and flies somewhere into the wall. The tall one pins Hillary against the wall with his foot. This time Larry asks the guy to calm down, but in a more stern form. His gaze did not express a calm smile, as before, but anger. But Hillary hissed to the tall one that he knew Larry's leg pressed his body tightly to the floor. The tall teacher will only distract from the fact that he knows about Dustin's whereabouts. The guy enthusiastically jumps off the floor and attacks Larry with questions. Hillary attacks the guy with a demand that he quickly tell him this information, and also swings his fist at him. But the tall one in response says that it's even more fun and also swings his fist. Two fists fly at each other. At the moment of the collision, Uncle Holly appears on the battlefield. He stops the attacks of both guys, holding their fists in his own. The man said that Dustin was participating in the greatest martial arts tournament among teenagers. Hillary wonders why Dustin went to this tournament. The guy tried to ask what Uncle Holly meant by these words, but at that same moment his body lost its balance and flew down. The man managed to catch the guy's body. Larry approached them and asked if his whipping bag was alive. The old man told him not to worry. The guy had just been in a state of rage for too long. The man added with a smile that that's why the guy fell asleep from fatigue. After which the guys sat there for a while and left the abandoned building. Holly's uncle told his niece that the boy really sleeps a lot. The new girl was glad that everything was fine with the young man. The man told the girl that the hospital said he was fine, so he asked his niece not to worry. After which Uncle Holly asked the relative why she was so interested in this guy. But the girl remained silent. The man added that all this was even a little strange. She even moved closer to go to the same school as him. The old man recalled that, if his memory serves him right, then in her eyes all the guys were just pitiful creatures who pay attention only to appearance. And asked what happened, the girl said that her opinion had not changed much. The niece told her uncle that she first saw Hillary under the bridge. Then she was in the 2nd grade of high school and was just heading to her uncle. It was the day right after a rainstorm, so the current was very strong. Then right before her eyes the girl fell into the water. Holly couldn't do anything because she was on the bridge. She still tried to get the others' attention so they would call 911. But at that moment, one person jumped right after this girl without a moment's delay. Then Holly realized that the guy didn't even know how to swim, and still, without hesitation, he jumped after her. That's how Hillary attracted her attention. The girl thought that he might be different from other men. The uncle, in response to the story he heard, said that it seems that this is not the first time for the guy to act, relying only on his instincts. The man added that they still have a problem brewing. He wanted to send the guy to a mixed martial arts tournament, so that he could earn money for him. But since his niece shows interest in this young man, he cannot use him as he pleases. But Holly blushed slightly and said that it was all wrong. The young man just attracted her attention and that's all. The old man said that he would just pretend that he didn't know anything. In response, the girl sighed. Uncle Holly said that question aside, the man told him that this Dustin guy has decided to take part in a teenage mixed martial arts tournament. But the man doesn't understand why he's so obsessed with him. Holly told her uncle that she didn't know all the details. But Hillary's close friend had recently stopped coming to school, and around the same time, Dustin had dropped out of school and disappeared. The girl wondered if it could be that the girl whom Hillary saved then was his close friend. One day a girl was walking down the street. She was carrying a bag of groceries. The lady was lost in her thoughts, when suddenly she is knocked off the road by a tall man. The lady falls to the ground and drops the entire contents of the bag. But the stranger did not even move. The man, in a very rude manner, told the girl to watch where she was going. The lady began to silently collect food, and the passerby did not like that the girl left his words unanswered. The rude man grabs the girl by the collar of her coat and begins to swear at the lady harder. The man said that this passerby was starting to piss him off. The man was about to raise his hand to strike. Suddenly someone approached him. The unknown person grabbed the man's hand and squeezed it tightly. The rude man asked what kind of man he was. The young man told the passerby how he was not ashamed to behave like that with a girl. But the man didn't even try to admit he was wrong, calling the guy crazy. But the young man responded by pulling the rude man's hand. A fight broke out between a man and a guy. The fight was fought on equal terms. But after a couple of moments, the advantage in the fight was already with the young man, who without much difficulty twisted the man in his hands. And when he let go of the enemy, he rolled head over heels and hit his back against the wall. Other men ran up to the rude passerby and asked him to wake up. The guys apparently picked up their boss and walked away, throwing various threats after the tall guy. The young man inquired about the girl's well-being and immediately said that there was no need to thank him. The lady silently collected her purchases back into her bag. The guy responded to her reticence and wanted to help the girl get up, but she dissatisfiedly threw his hand off her elbow. The girl dryly told the young man to get lost, and she walked away. The young man was shocked by this situation. Meanwhile, Hillary woke up and grabbed his head, as it hurt. The young man wondered when he managed to put on his glasses. As soon as he had his glasses back on, everything that happened then began to look like a dream. When he could not see clearly, it seemed to him as if the whole world was against him. But to his surprise, this only gave him confidence in his abilities. And now that the guy is wearing glasses, he feels naked again. But one thing the young man remembers clearly is the feeling of relief when he defeated these bandits, as if all his sins and shame were washed away by a wave. After that, there was only one thought in the young man's head, this thought that Hillary again wanted to destroy them. Perhaps it was at that moment that an uncontrollable desire arose in the guy to beat these scum. Suddenly the door to the room opened. Holly stood on the canopy. She asked the guy if he was awake. He answered yes. The new girl said that he was right. When the young man has his glasses on, he becomes much calmer. The guy didn't quite understand what the girl was talking about, but Holly said what she meant was that the glasses made the guy look like a different person. The girl finally added that the others had already arrived and were waiting for him on the first floor. The young man followed the new girl. Uncle Holly began to explain the essence of the tournament. The man started with the qualifying round for the greatest teen tournament that will be held this month, the greatest teen league, and so on. But anyway, the important thing is that they only accept one application per month. The old man gave an example that only 32 people from one village will be able to participate in this league. After the first preliminary match, depending on the victory or defeat, the judges will start counting their points. If the points received are higher than those of the other 32, then he will be able to take part in the tournament. But more importantly, Dustin is already participating in this tournament. Uncle Holly added that they don't know anything except his name, because the tournament organizers carefully hide all information so that reprisals against the participants do not occur. But Dustin has already reached the Tier 3 title, so he's already in the league, which means Hillary needs to make it to the Tier 3 title to face him. The young man said that he also wanted to sign up for the tournament. The man said that the guy shouldn't worry, because he had already signed the boy up to participate in the tournament. And the old man reminded that 80% of the profits from this tournament go to Uncle Holly. But the girl was outraged by this information. The old man answered his niece that this was Hillary's own decision, he did not force him at all, to which the girl simply sighed. The man turned to Larry because he had been sitting quietly all this time and not asking any questions, even though this was his first tournament. But the tall one was thinking about a recent incident with a girl. She didn't have a school uniform. The guy suggested that she could study in college. But why she didn't like him? It was because he was a high school student. The old man tried to bring Larry back from his thoughts. He suddenly raised his hand and said that he had a question about what type of guys girls like. Everyone present around was perplexed by such an unexpected content of the lofty question. Uncle Holly asked the guy what he had just asked. Larry began to make excuses that this was not for him, but for a friend. But the man said that the tall man had no friends, to which he replied offended that he did. The old man noticed that it was strange and unexpected that the grandson of the owner of the corporation had fallen in love. But Larry continued to protest that it was not what Uncle Holly thought. Sometime later, in the evening, Hillary was getting ready to go home because if he was again involved in a similar incident like last week, he would not be able to participate in the tournament. However, the guy was constantly looking for places where bad guys might hang out. Although the young man was terribly scared, he could not stop his legs, as if his whole body wanted it. The guy wanted to experience this feeling again. The feeling of relief when he beats these bandits. This feeling of liberation that he had been missing so much. Suddenly someone called Hillary. The young man looked around in the direction of the voice calling him. It was a group of 4 guys, not very friendly in appearance, obviously criminals. And then his heart was beating wildly, as if it was trying to jump out of his chest. The guy didn't understand why he was here, and it seemed to him that he was already regretting it. But at that very moment the guys shoved him into the center of their criminal group, planning to sort it out. The man shouted at Hillary why he didn't hear him calling him. The unknown criminal said that if the guy doesn't want to die in this alley, then let him lay out everything he has. The young man, slightly rising from the ground, said that he had nothing. But the robber jokingly called the guy a hero and told him to take off his glasses. The man clarified that the guy is unlikely to want the criminal to break his glasses along with his face. But the young man stood silently, his gaze modestly lowered to the floor. The attacker asked Hillary if he was listening to him at all. The man again orders the boy to take off his glasses, but this time he hits the guy in the face with all his strength, causing the boy to lose his glasses. The glasses fell onto the street tiles, bouncing off the guy. The guy finally realized that coming here was the right decision. The calm and balanced expression on Hillary's face abruptly gives way to a wide smile, full of madness and passion for fights.